and it culminated in him saying, "How much money do I get? 1, 2, 3, 4 million." And, I mean, bragging about money never goes down too well in Germany at the best of times.
Hello, welcome to the very first Euroleagues of a brand new season. So coming up, we're going to be chatting bust-ups, wantaway players. Joining us for the first show of a brand new season, James Horncastle, Rafa Honigstein, and Julien Laurens. We are so back.
Hello, boys.
Hello.
How
we
we
are
doing?
so back.
We're so back, James.
We're so back.
So back. And can I just say that for anyone who doesn't know, you can watch us on YouTube, right? Not live. So if you go on YouTube right now, you won't find us. But if you're listening in the future, if for you this is not Thursday night 5 Live Sport, if for you this is Friday morning, head over to the BBC Sport YouTube channel and you can watch us. And we've all got ready for this occasion. So we've got special Football Daily podcast microphone heads. I can see mine, I can see Jules, I can see Raf's, and there's James Horncastle's. Oh, I thought you'd forgotten it for a second there, James.
Yeah, I got excited, and here it is.
How are you doing, Raf? You all right?
Yeah, really well. Very happy to see all of you.
It's lovely to see you all. Can I ask, Jules, before we go any further, I've just seen you tweeting about the show, and you said word of the day, or 2 words, is argy-bargy. Is this new to you?
This is my favorite English, one of my favorite English words in the English language. Yeah, I love argy-bargy. I don't know why. It's the sound of it, what it means, you know, the fighting, and I just love it. So every time I can say argy-bargy, I say it. So be ready to listen to it many times tonight.
Is there a French or Italian or German equivalent of argy-bargy, or is it totally our own?
I can't think of one.
Ours would be embrouille, but it's not
nowhere near as good.
Spectacular as argy-bargy for sure.
No, we have a word for when players come together, and it's more than 2. It's Rudelbildung.
Oh, it's good.
I mean, that's pretty good.
That's good. I think
just made that up.
Argy-bargy's been
You made that up for the show.
Yeah. Argy-bargy's officially been knocked into second place there. So this is the week of Eberechi Eze and the summer of Alexander Isak. So the question is, what about our continental equivalents? So we'll do some Donnarumma, some Ademola Lookman, some Florian Neuhaus on the way as well. We've got to kick off with Marseille, though. So manager Roberto...
It all kicked off in Marseille.
Oh,
yeah.
I mean, I'll do I'll do a bit of context, Jules, and then I'll just kind of let rip on it, because as a PSG fan, Marseille imploding is like your best day. So I understand that. So basically, Roberto De Zerbi, who's the manager, has told Adrien Rabiot and Jonathan Rowe, who was once at Norwich City, that they will never play for the club again because they had a fight, literal fight, after the opening weekend loss to Rennes. This is a quote from the club president, Pablo Longoria. He said it's an event of extreme gravity and violence, something unheard of. We've had to make a decision that protects the institution. Extreme gravity and violence sounds a bit Clockwork Orange to me, Jules.
It does. And if you're listening today to Adrien Rabiot's mum, Véronique, who is not just his mum, but his agent as well, she came on French radio and said, extreme violence, but hang on a minute, extreme violence with nobody injured, nobody going to hospital, nobody not being able to go to work, nobody actually, I don't know, pressing charges or something like that. How can it be violent if there's none of the above, basically? And I think she's got a point. All of this after the defeat of Marseille were Rennes on Friday night for the opening day of the Ligue 1 season. They played for half an hour with 11 men against 10. They end up losing at the last kick of the game. Everybody's very frustrated. You go into the dressing room. Tempers are boiling up, boiling over, or boiling out, every boiling that you can. And then, obviously, as it's boiling so much, that Jonathan Rowe and Adrien Rabiot go into argy-bargy. I'm not sure what the word for argy-bargy is, but they're argy-bargying each other.
It's a tension bouillabaisse.
Bouillabaisse, exactly.
Boiling over.
That's beautiful.
Not once, by the way, because first they have a fight where apparently Rabiot throws a punch at Jonathan Rowe. Then they are separated. Jonathan Rowe goes out of the dressing room, then comes back in. And this time there's another fight between them two. And after that, they're first expelled from the first team squad on Monday. Then on Tuesday, they're being told that they've got no future at the club. They need to find a new club, basically. To which I think there's obviously, as always, two sides of the story. In this case, like in many cases in football. The fact that Adrien Rabiot had 1 year left on his contract, that he's the highest earner at the club, that he was not going to extend his contract. That meant after this season, Marseille would have lost him on a free transfer, right? Which they didn't really like the idea of. And certainly the Rabiot camp is putting this theory forwards, far from the argy-bargy from what happened in the dressing room at Rennes, but more that they wanted to recoup some money on his value and transfer from a year ago when they signed him from Juventus on a free. And by not letting him run down his contract, basically, and just saying, hang on, we don't want you here anymore, find a club, we want 15 million euros for you, and then we can reinvest that money. And I think the truth is probably a bit in between. But what's true is that 2 weeks ago, everybody at the club was saying what a great guy Rabiot was, the best player they've ever played with or ever had to coach or ever had to manage. And suddenly from that, he went from being a pariah and just wanting him out of the club, which I find it really hard to believe.
Is that the third player that De Zerbi got rid of after Ismail Cornet, or am I losing one or two that haven't come out yet? Because it was extraordinary to see Marseille release the footage of the bust-up in that documentary in early August, how he got rid of him. I didn't think he came across particularly well, which made me... I was surprised that the club sort of made it so public.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, you know what kind of manager Roberto De Zerbi is. We've seen him at Brighton. James has seen him in Italy before. You know that he's got like this high, very excessive.
He boils over.
Boils over. Balls out, balls up, balls over. All the balls.
This is
for
the
him
worst
as well.
at English you've ever been, Jules. Like, you're so good at English.
I struggle sometimes with all your ups and outs and
emotions.
on.
Honestly.
But not with Argy-bargy.
I don't think you're struggling at
Argy-bargy
all,
each
my
other.
friend.
But the truth is that you're right. It's not the first time that De Zerbi was either involved in a bust-up or witnessing a bust-up in one of his dressing rooms. It's also true that it's not good when you fight, but we've seen loads of fights. Remember, Rafi, when Sadio Mane and Leroy Sané got into a fight, nobody got sacked or put on the transfer list because of that.
Not
so
immediately.
I think not immediately, you're right. But that's why I think there's a bit of both. Yes, it's not a good look when your senior player, most experienced, the leader in your dressing room, has a fight with a much younger junior player like Rabiot did with Rowe. I also think that they probably thought it's a good thing if we get rid of him now and get some money in, because otherwise we will lose him in a year on a free.
So the argy-bargy thing, Jules, this has gone beyond that now, hasn't it? So this is like a full-on fight. And this is what I was interested in, because like the club president talked about never having seen anything like this. Is the general consensus then that beyond, the Rabiot family, that it has been overplayed slightly? Yeah?
Yeah, certainly from what I've been told, it was not that violent. It was argy-bargy, and like we said, I think it happens in a lot of dressing room. It's not nice, especially on the first day of the season. If you're halfway through and you've been struggling, you haven't won a game in 15, I can maybe more understand than if it's the opening game of the season and there's still 33 games to be played in Ligue 1 over the season for Marseille to fix things, basically. But yeah, I think he's been a bit overplayed by Marseille as an excuse to get rid of those two players. I mean, Véronique Rabiot today came out so strongly against Pablo Longoria, the president you mentioned, and Mehdi Benatia, the sporting director, saying that they're basically liars. Nobody ever gets sacked or put on a transfer list or sold because of this kind of incident in the dressing room, because of argy-bargy. So I think she's probably right in a way. But again, this is their decision, and now they've got 10 days to find a way out for Adrien.
I wonder what the podcast title for this episode of the EuroLeagues is going to be. I can't possibly think what it might be. Can we talk
Boils and bust-ups.
Yeah. I assumed argy-bargy, but it could be all three. Could be all three. Argy-bargy. Oh, it's perfect. It's perfect. We're wasted. Can we talk a bit about De Zerbi then, James? Because I remember when he got the job, and he was like talking about one of our great colleagues on 5 Live, Chris Waddle, Magic Chris, and saying, it was Chris Waddle that kind of made him fall in love with Marseille and all this kind of thing. But there was a point last season where there was a story in L'Equipe about a mutiny in the dressing room.
Yeah.
Now there's this going on as well. This doesn't seem like a dream anymore, James.
No, and Jules will remember this. He, I think, as part of a team talk in front of the players, kind of showed the offer he claimed to have had from Manchester United, and was, I took this job over Man United. But yeah, this is Roberto. I mean, he is a romantic. To go back to your point about Chris Waddle. That won't have been entirely kind of playing to the gallery. That is the kind of player and the kind of football that Roberto De Zerbi likes to see and coach. Players taking risks, players being daring, players being provocative, and it's interesting. I mean, Jules. I thought going into this summer in Italy, for example, there were a lot of big jobs that came up. AC Milan came up, and they went with Max Allegri, and I thought they might have gone for De Zerbi. De Zerbi has been in their thoughts in the past. I think De Zerbi came through the youth ranks at Milan, and one day may coach them. But I was a little bit surprised that he stayed at Marseille, particularly when Simone Inzaghi left Inter to go to Al Hilal, and they went for Cesc Fabregas, and then they settled on Christian Kivu. So it's kind of interesting that, Roberto, I'm not diminishing Marseille. Marseille is a huge club. They're the club that gets under Julien Laurens' skin the most when they do well, which isn't often.
Not often.
But yeah, it is a curious situation. Rafa, I can't believe as, a journalist, you're saying, Marseille, why did they let that stuff go in the documentary? That's the kind of stuff we want to see. We don't want to see these watered down documentaries. We want to see that sort of stuff. I'm gutted the cameras weren't in there at the weekend.
No, maybe they won't. Maybe they won't.
But to come back to what Jules was saying, I think it's very interesting. This, if you want to get rid of a player and cash in while you still can on a player, does this not damage his value? This kind of story that is being, put out or exaggerated I don't want to put words in Veronique Rabiot's mouth, but the idea that it wasn't extreme violence, it wasn't extreme. Yeah, surely if you're presenting that as a story, it damages your chances of getting money for Adrien Rabiot, no?
Yeah, I think that's a good point, especially because he's got a bit of previous too, for what happened in some of the clubs or with the national team before. And it was not always his fault, but some of the reactions after this incident and everything that's happened this week, because we had pretty much something new every day. Today, Thursday, yesterday, Wednesday, Tuesday, Monday, or through the weekend, Friday night, obviously. And a lot of people are saying, it's Rabiot. This is what happens when you've got Rabiot in your team. Something goes wrong at some point, or he clashes with somebody, or there's an altercation, there's a problem, he's mum, this and that, which I think is a little bit unfair because it hasn't always been his fault, but it's a bit of a reputation now. And you're right. Some clubs might be thinking, he's 30 years old now. Yes, he's still very good on his day. He's still a French international. But look at the history that he has and the baggage that he comes with, I guess. So it doesn't seem to be too much for a club like Al Ittihad or Galatasaray, who are clearly two clubs who are very keen. Probably in Italy, his stakes is still quite high because he did well at Juventus, certainly more towards the end than at the beginning, for sure. Especially with Max Allegri, who I think they're still quite close. But he's on huge money. He earns around 8 million euros a year. Plus the around 15 million euro transfer fee. That's a lot of money still for a 30-year-old. So late in the transfer window, it might not be easy for Marseille to offload him.
And obviously Jules there is talking about Rabiot, Raf, but so much of what he was saying there, I was thinking, how much of this could we apply to Roberto De Zerbi? Because it's only just over a year ago that, he was being linked with Bayern Munich. He was being linked with the biggest clubs. It sort of feels like his star is really not just falling, but plummeting at the moment. The idea that he would be linked to a job of that size now feels a bit farcical, doesn't it?
I think it can change quickly again if he has a fantastic season with Marseille. His stock will rise again. But I think it's true. The things that kind of scared one or two clubs was exactly that. The idea that he is a little bit overbearing, that he falls out with players, that it's his way or the highway, that he puts pressure on the people above him to buy certain players. If you're a sporting director and you're interviewing a guy and you know that guy has publicly made demands of the owners at Brighton, widely considered one of the best in the business, you think, do I need all that hassle? Yes, the football has been sensational at times, really quite mold-breaking, very influential. A lot of people have copied his ideas or at least sort of been inspired by it. But do you want all the drama that goes with it? And of course, most people don't want it. Maybe James is right. Maybe Marseille said, yes, exactly. For that reason, we want him, because he'll add more drama and more sort of narrative to the story of the season. But I think it's too early to write him off. I think it can really change again in the other direction if he has a great season.
Let's move on to Gianluigi Donnarumma then. So we'll get on to where he's expected to move to in a moment. We know that Luis Enrique basically decided he wanted a different profile of goalkeeper. Donnarumma obviously not particularly happy with that, said in a statement just over a week ago, unfortunately, someone, who I don't know who that could be, has decided that I can no longer be part of the group at PSG and contribute to the team's success. I am disappointed and disheartened. I'm not sure, Jules, whether it matters if sort of one agrees or disagrees with the decision to move on from Donnarumma. It's a little bit about how it's been handled, isn't it, as well?
Yeah, I guess so. And especially after what happened last season, or certainly the second half of last season, when he was exceptional for PSG. And I think without him, they don't win the Champions League. That's a fact. The thing is that they felt another direction was probably the right thing, another profile, as you mentioned. There was also money involved behind there, but very likely in the Rabiot situation, in the sense that they could not agree an extension. Donnarumma is on the old contract at the club, the last one in this current squad to be on the old contract, which is a very traditional contract. This is what you earn, this is your wages, there's a few bonuses, but that's it. All the new contracts that are given to everybody else apart from him are contract with a lower wages, if you want, and then a lot of incentive that can make your salary rise. For example, Ilya Zabani, who just arrived from Bournemouth, is on 4 million euros a year, but with the incentives, if it's a good season individually and collectively, that can go up to 8 million a year. And Donnarumma didn't want a contract like that. He wanted the old contract. He was very happy with the old school way. So there's a bit of money there. There's probably also a bit of power flex from Luis Enrique, in the sense that of the starting 11, or probably the first 13 or 14 players, he chose them all. It's all his guys, whether they were there at the club before he arrived or not, but he chose them. Yes, I want him as a right back. Yes, I want him as a left back, etc. The goalkeeper was the only one that really he inherited from before. Donnarumma was signed under Leonardo. So even the previous sporting director, even a few managers before Luis Enrique, and I think there was probably a desire from Luis Enrique to actually go with his own guy, with his own goalkeeper that he would have chosen, and that's also, I think, part of the reason. So there's a bit of a three-way in this decision: the lack of contract extension, the fact that they wanted a different profile, and also the fact that Luis Enrique, I think, wanted to flex and choose his own goalkeeper.
So does that mean then, right, that Donnarumma would have been one of the top earners from last season, or not one of the top earners from last season? Because presumably the players with the incentive-based contracts did really well because they won the Champions League. So do you see what I mean? I'm interested to know how well he actually did out of last season.
Yeah, he was ninth, and the club is saying there was an offer on the table that made him the third highest earner with this new contract, new structure behind Dembele and Marquinhos, which, again, you don't have to believe the club, but this is what the club is briefing. And it's a contract that he didn't want. He wanted a pay rise with the old style of contract, again, to go back to that would have made him a much higher earner than what he's on now, although he earns a lot of money already now. But that was also part of the problem. And as always, there's always a money issue somewhere in those situations. But also on the pitch, as good as he was on his line, and he's the best in the world, and he's going to win the Yashin Trophy next month, crowning him again the best goalkeeper in the world. In his distribution with the ball at his feet, and certainly on crosses and in the air, I think Luis Enrique and the club felt that they could find somebody better than him.
James, I hear a lot of Manchester City, and there was before that quite a bit of Manchester United floating around Donnarumma. What about Serie A?
Impossible.
Really?
Impossible because of what we've been talking about for the last few minutes, his salary. You know, I mean, Gigio Donnarumma, when he was still a teenager, you know, and he's been around for 10 years, he's still only 25. When he was a teenager, at the first contract negotiation that Mino Raiola did with AC Milan, it was when a new executive team had come in, and that summer they were confronted with, you don't want to lose the future of the club in your first month in charge, do you? So what did they do? They made him the highest paid player in Serie A, you know, as a teenager. You know, he was making, off the top of my head, I think it was 6.5 million a year net. And, you know, that led to the nickname Dollarumma when he was playing as a youth team international and then with the senior national team. He joined Paris Saint-Germain, even though he was a boyhood AC Milan fan, because, again, his representation went for contract negotiations with Milan, couldn't find a deal, and he went on a free transfer. They signed Mike Maignan. Mike Maignan was one of the best players when AC Milan won the league for the first time in, I think, 11 years. But look, I mean, Enzo Raiola, who looks after him, you know, thinks that the PSG move has been a success. You know, obviously, they won the Champions League for the first time last year. Gigio was a massive part of that. And, you know, his stock has risen. You know, I don't think PSG win the Champions League last year without him, given his performances in the knockout stages for them. But that leaves you now with the question, well, where does he go? And, you know, I don't think it would be right for the captain of Italy to be going to the Saudi Pro League in a World Cup year. His representation have made it clear that they would like him to go to the Premier League. I think there's a feeling that, you know, Chelsea, the goalkeeper situation never feels entirely convincing. At Man City, you know, obviously there are two goalkeepers at the moment. There's Edison and James Trafford. But Edison has interest from Turkey. And then Man United, Onana, you know, people weren't convinced by him. And, you know, we saw what happened when that cross came in for Bayern in the Arsenal game. But all of those clubs that I've mentioned have got goalkeepers, lots of goalkeepers. And so they would have to make the decision to move one of those goalkeepers out. And Jules will tell you that, you know, PSG recognise the value of Gigio Donnarumma. And even though he's got 1 year left on his contract, what's the sticker price for Gigio Donnarumma from PSG, Jules?
Yeah, 40 million euros. Ideally, they would want.
Yeah, which, you know, I mean, is quite a lot of money for a guy that you can get for free. And I think they're, you know, I mean, at the beginning of the summer, Donnarumma said, I am going to see out my contract with PSG. My PSG are the priority for my future. And I think certainly from his side, you know, I think there were contract talks in the spring. Jules has mentioned that they wanted to put him on this new contract format that the other PSG players are in. I think they met after the Champions League final before they played Atletico Madrid in the Club World Cup. And, you know, his entourage basically said, okay, we see what you want to do. We agree to it, but with a condition. But that condition wasn't allowed, or it was removed. And from that point on, it was kind of like, well, this is going to be very difficult. Still, we want to see out our final year at PSG. And PSG basically just said, no, you're out of the squad. So, you know, it's a difficult position, particularly for the Italian national team. He's the captain of the Italian national team. Italy lost 3-0 to Norway in Oslo in their first World Cup qualifier. They are behind the 8 ball when it comes to qualifying for the World Cup again. And the last thing that they need, really, is for the only Italian player on the Ballon d'Or list to have an uncertain future, an uncertain time when they've got these big qualifiers coming up in September, October, November.
On the scale, Raf, of Eberechi Eze still there, still playing despite wanting to leave and eventually getting his move, all the way up to Alexander Isak with his statements and all that kind of thing. Where does Florian Neuhaus sit? Tell us about his situation and why he's been, and this is a word you only have in these kind of stories, banished to the youth team of Borussia Mönchengladbach.
Yeah, Neuhaus is
Sorry.
the correct way.
Neuhaus.
I'm not sure he belongs on that scale because this is very much an involuntary self-demotion rather than somebody angling for a move and trying to do something that gets him out. He doesn't want to get out, but unfortunately he was caught in a, I would say, compromising position, looking a little bit too, perhaps enjoying a night out too much in Spain, and was being filmed by Gladbach fans talking in a way that at least allegedly seemed to quite be denigrating to the sporting director. And it culminated in him saying, "How much money do I get? 1, 2, 3, 4 million." And, bragging about money never goes down too well in Germany at the best of times. But combined with the sense that Neuhaus was poking fun at the club, paying him so much money because he's no longer a regular, he's no longer the very hyped up player that he was 5-6 years ago, made the club very angry. And as he said, they made him train with the under-23s. He's since been allowed back into the fold, and he will be in the team, or at least in the squad, for the opening game against Hamburg on Sunday. But yeah, it wasn't the best look, and a real warning there not to discuss A, your salary, and B, the competence or lack thereof of your superiors as a footballer when there's mobile phones around.
You said alleged there, so that's important because the quotes that I'd read said that he described the sporting director as being the worst manager in the world. But is that slightly disputed then, or is there just a bit of nuance?
It's slightly disputed because it's not quite sure if he says that or if one of the fans says it to him and he just nods along. But he was there, present and possibly involved as well.
Okay, well, these are just direct quotes from Ademola Lookman, so we can read these with absolutely no trouble at all. So Lookman's been trying to leave Atalanta all summer, and he did the sort of Isak route. He released a statement. I might as well read all of it because it's good. He said, "Over the past 3 years at Atalanta, I've given everything. Winning the Europa League was one of the proudest moments of my career. I've loved every moment, but I feel that now is the right time to move and experience a new adventure. There have been numerous clubs approaching Atalanta. I've previously stayed loyal. However, myself and the ownership of the club have been in agreement. Now is the right time. The club were clear with me. If a fair offer came in, they would allow me to move. Despite now receiving an offer in alignment to what I believe had been discussed, the club are blocking the opportunity for reasons I do not understand. I feel I have no choice but to speak out for what I believe is right. Enough is enough." James, discuss.
Yeah, even last year, Ademola Lookman was looking to leave after winning the Europa League, Man of the Match, African Player of the Year. He was later named. I think there was talk of an offer from PSG, quite a low offer, which I think Atalanta looked at and thought, hang on a minute, he's worth more than that. Now, I think this comes down to the mutual agreement or the promises that were made between Ademola Lookman, his representation, and the club itself. Because I think the club did say to Ademola Lookman, look, if a fair offer comes in, we'll consider it and we'll let you go. But from, I think, their perspective, it was if it is a elite foreign club, not a domestic rival. And the offer that has come in for him is from Inter, just up the road in Milan, the runners-up who finished one place above Atalanta in the table last year. And Atalanta quite unexpectedly received this offer from a Saudi Pro League club, Al-Qadsiya, for their capocannoniere, Matteo Retegui, in the summer. Retegui topped the goal-scoring charts in Serie A, and all of a sudden there's a 70 million offer on the table, and they're like, oh, wow, okay, we're definitely taking that. See you, Matteo, we'll drive you to the airport. And that means that they don't need to sell Lookman. I mean, even if they hadn't sold Retegui, they wouldn't have needed, because they're such a well-run club. But they've got all this money for Retegui. They've got a new coach, because Gianpiero Gasperini left after nearly a decade. And they appreciate that it's quite a delicate time for a new coach to come in. You don't want to lose your top scorer. You don't want to lose another really good player in Lookman. So, look, I think they've been clear that, if an offer were to have come in from Barcelona, which I think is what Lookman was dreaming of, they would have taken it. I think there was interest from Arsenal as well, that Andrea Berta was keeping tabs on him, but looked at him as a kind of, that it was him and Eze, for example. And I think both of those players, Eze and Lookman, I think one of the reasons why Arsenal have only now gone for Eze is because the injury, to Kai Havertz. Because I think that they looked at both Lookman and Eze and look, these guys are 27, 28, and this is going to be a lot of money to pay for these players. So, I feel for Lookman. I think he also looked at the Premier League and kind of felt like, well, I've done that. It didn't rule it out going back to the Premier League, but I think he maybe wanted to experience something else, maybe in France or Spain. But obviously when this big offer from Inter came in, he thought that matches my ambition. It's just that from Atalanta's perspective, sorry, they're a domestic rival, so we're not interested. But there's still 10 days of this transfer window to come, so let's see.
James, were Atalanta at all persuaded or swayed by the 50-page dossier that Didier Drogba handed in, reportedly supporting the move?
Reportedly, yeah. I haven't been able to stand up this quite sensational story of what Drogba. I don't even think he mailed it in. The report was that I think he actually come to Italy. I will endeavour to find out, but so far they have not been swayed because Ademola Lookman is still an Atalanta player. I would say that Atalanta did this last year with Teon Koopmeiners, and then basically Koopmeiners said very early on, I would like to go to Juventus, and they were like, yeah, nah. And Juventus kept coming, and then they sold him right at the end of the transfer window for top dollar. So let's see. But it seems that Inter have, today they've signed a player from Lens called Andy Diouf.
Yeah, Paris born and raised.
And it looks like the money that they had allocated for Lookman is already being spent elsewhere.
Jules, just to wrap on this, if there are any top players who are listening to us on the EuroLeagues, there's no such thing as a gentleman's agreement. Get it down on paper. That's the way the world works.
Put a release clause in or something similar to a release clause. There's countries where it's allowed, others it's not really allowed, but there's another way to be put on paper. Like you say, Steve, there's this yes, we will allow you to leave next summer if an offer is right. For a club, an offer could never be right. So put something down with a number, a realistic number, by the way, and then you'll be more secure than if you just have somebody saying one day a year early, yeah, don't worry, it'll be fine. Let's just have this season and then we will see, because it just never happens like this.
And just like that, we've only got 12 minutes left of the first EuroLeagues of the new season, and we haven't talked about anything on the pitch. But I have loved the Argy-bargy. It's been great.
Argy-bargy.
Let's do a bit on the start of the Bundesliga season now then, shall we? Because it kicks off on Friday night and it's Bayern Munich against RB Leipzig from 7:30. I've never been able to say this before. You can watch the match with BBC Sport on the website, on the app, on iPlayer as well, as part of the BBC's new multi-year rights deal with the Bundesliga. That sounded good. We'll get on to Bayern in a sec, Raf, but why don't we start with Leipzig? 7th last season, 31 points behind Bayern. New manager, new sporting director, new hope.
And a new team, really. I mean, they've gone heavy into the market. They've already bought 7 players with realistic chance of playing in the first team. Of course, some of that money is the Šeško money being reinvested. But it's so intriguing because this was their worst ever season since going up. They will not be in Europe for the first time, which in a way makes them perhaps a favourite to at least be much better, because everyone else above them will be hampered by European football and they can really concentrate. But they have a new manager in Ole Werner, and they have an increasingly active behind the scenes Jurgen Klopp, who I think after initially thinking this is going to be a really interesting job, in inverted commas, where you just travel around a bit and sort of talk to coaches and then travel to the next one, suddenly finds himself being seen as the guy who will right the wrongs at a lot of these clubs. And of course, the biggest problem one is the flagship club in RB Leipzig. And there's talk, we will see, of course, tomorrow night, that the new Leipzig version will be a 4-3-3, very much in the Klopp mold at Liverpool, which is a complete sort of break from Leipzig tradition. They often play with two strikers, they often play with two number 10s, but to play with two wingers and three midfielders is going to be fairly new for them. And they have bought different type of players, and I think there's so much intrigue and interest around this club, even though, as we know, they don't have the history and the fan culture of some of the bigger, more traditional teams. I think as a sporting project, as a club that is clearly sort of at the crossroads, it's going to be very, very interesting to see what happens. And of course, some of the players that they bought are super exciting as well. There's Jan Diomond, who looks really, really interesting as a player. Bakayoko has come from Eindhoven. Romelu from Göztepe is supposed to be the new centre forward. And of course, they have a fantastic history when it comes to discovering centre forwards early. So I'm really excited to see if they can back into the groove and once again become the place where you see coaches and players take the next level rather than kind of stall a little bit, as was the case in the last 2 years.
Can you see anybody compete with Bayern for the title? Do you think Dortmund and the Kovac? Do you think Leipzig? Do you think Ten Hag and Leverkusen could have a go, or is just Bayern going to be too strong?
I think Bayern as of now, look a little bit weak in terms of the quantity of the players. The starting 11 is great, but then behind it, they have lost a lot of players and they haven't really replenished. Certainly not in numbers. Luis Diaz is the only really notable addition, and Tom Bischoff and Jonathan Tah, of course, were picked up before the Club World Cup. But up front, I think they might still need somebody. And there's a bit of a debate at the moment, or debate is maybe the wrong word, but Max Eberl has been told he can only loan a player, which of course makes it difficult for Bayern to find somebody at this level. And I think that if they lose a couple of more players, and remember, Musiala probably won't be back before the end of the year. I think Alphonso Davies is unlikely to be back. Ito is unlikely to be back. If they lose one or more of the key starters, then I think suddenly the field can open up. And then it's a question of who will find the consistency. Leipzig are in transition and Leverkusen are in transition. And that makes it really hard for them, because I think they might take time with their new coaches and their new teams to really get going. And that's why a lot of people like you, Jules, think that Kovac, having had that great finish to last season, is maybe in a better position. But I'm still a little bit doubtful, I must say. I watched them really toil against Essen in the Cup, and they are very difficult to break down. They have great quality going forward with Guirassy, who's still there, luckily for them. But I just don't see how they're going to break down teams with the same level of dominance, the way that Leverkusen have been doing over the last 2 years, and Bayern since Kovac is there, since Kompany has come in. So I am less crazy about Dortmund. I think Frankfurt, Leipzig and Leverkusen, to me, despite the issues that I just mentioned for the two bigger ones, might be in a better position to push Bayern.
Jules, I'm just going to ask you this, and then we'll do a bit of Serie A, because we've only got 5 minutes left. I said I'd ask at the start, a continental alternative for Crystal Palace now that Eberechi Eze is on his way?
I think they've chosen already. One player they really like is Bilal El-Khanous from Leicester. The other one is Solis at Cercle Bruges, who is more of a typical winger than what Eze was and that what El-Khanous is, for example. But very, very talented. They lost one winger to Sunderland already, Cercle Bruges Club Bruges, in the transfer window. They could lose another one in Solis if Palace really, I think, put the right offer in.
Right, James, new Serie A season. I know we're having a bit of a whistle-stop tour here, but it's not like we've got a whole season to talk about this stuff, so I'm sure we'll be fine. So, 4 champions in 6 seasons, nobody's retained it. Antonio Conte basically said, I'll stay at Napoli, but only if you fulfill my requirements. So I assume that's happened, because there he is.
Hey, look, I know Antonio has a reputation, but he's been very chill this summer. And I think it's because he feels like the hard work is maybe already done. He'd hate me saying that, but like he feels like they're ahead of schedule in winning the league last year. And they were really aggressive in the transfer market. I think they've learned the lessons of 2 years ago when their title defence was one of the worst in Serie A history. Remember, Napoli finished 10th after winning their first title in 33 years. Part of that was because Luciano Spalletti left. This time around, their title-winning coach isn't leaving. Another reason was because they didn't really invest in the team that year. They lost Kim, who went to Bayern Munich, and then they kept Victor Osimhen and Kvaratskhelia, and both of whom I think felt like they wanted to go. This time around, they've gone and got Kevin De Bruyne. That deal was wrapped up very soon after they won the title, and Conte knew that was happening. Signed a new centre-back who won the cup with Bologna, Noah Lang from PSV, Lorenzo Luca, big man. So I was very bullish about Napoli's prospects of retaining their title and being the first one to do it in 6 years since Juve, being the first ever Napoli side to retain the title. But then Romelu Lukaku got injured and he'll be out for at least 3 months. So they will be scrabbling around in the final 10 days of the transfer window to find a Lukaku alternative.
And if not them, then who?
It's very difficult, because I think Inter have still got a very stacked squad. I think a lot of people judge Inter on the Champions League final and not on their entire season when they were on for a treble going into April. They have rejuvenated what was shown to be an old team, but only shown to be an old team against PSG, because that old team still beat Bayern Munich and still beat Barcelona. But they've got a new coach, Christian Kivu, and this is a big leap from keeping Parma up. He was caretaker for Parma for 3 months last year, has worked in the academy at Inter, but it's a big leap, this. And then you've got AC Milan, who finished 8th last year. The only way is up. They brought in Allegri. Some people underwhelmed by that, but Allegri, most successful coach in Serie A, always gets teams into the Champions League. And I think this is the best midfield that Allegri has had since Juventus reached the Champions League final in 2017. Yes, Modric will be 40 next month, but signing Samuel Ricci and Arden Jashari from Club Brugge, I think they've got some really good players in midfield, and they've gone about a cultural reset. So I would say maybe Milan.
All right. Bosh, well done, everybody. That's the first EuroLeagues of the new season. That went very, very quickly. When we only had 12 minutes left, I even saw Rafa Honigstein raise his eyebrows, and it takes a lot to achieve that with you, Raf, to surprise you.
I was shocked.
Yeah, there you go.
Shocked.
Right, well, welcome back, everybody. Happy new season. Should we do this again next week?
Yeah, bring it on.
Yeah, definitely.
Right. Excellent. James Horncastle, Raphael Honigstein, and Julien Laurens. The EuroLeagues is back.
The Football Daily Podcast
on BBC Sounds.